Hello, welcome to our 6th class. Okay, today we are going to study adverbs of quantity. Okay, a very important class for us to understand how to use the adverbs with count and uncount nouns. Okay, let's start. So, to begin with, I brought here a text about a town, okay, a very big city actually, Moscow, okay, the capital of Russia. Okay, so let us read together. Come with me. Moscow is a very big city with over 16 million inhabitants. As most mega cities, Moscow faces many problems. There is too much pollution. Also, traffic is heavy and there isn't enough parking. There should be fewer cars, but there aren't enough buses. There is too little public transportation. Okay, so the text deals with big city problems, right? With here he uses the expression mega cities, which is an expression used to talk about cities with over 10 million inhabitants. Okay, do you guys know a synonym for inhabitants? Dwellers. Okay, very important vocabulary here. Okay, so now let us see if we have any other vocabulary problems. Moscow is a very big city with over 16 million inhabitants. Okay, this is actually the population. Okay, inhabitants or dwellers, which means the people who live in a certain place. Okay, as most mega cities, Moscow faces many problems. Okay, there is too much pollution. Okay, usually air pollution, noise pollution. Okay, like every big city in the world, right? Also, traffic is heavy. Okay, heavy traffic, many cars, traffic jams. Okay, this is a heavy traffic. And there isn't enough parking. Okay, parking is where we park the car, right? For example, when you go downtown, for example, you have to find a parking space, okay, or a place to park. Okay, there should be fewer cars. Now, this is a sentence that we use to give our opinion on how things should be different. Okay, so the author says here, there should be fewer cars. It is the same as saying there are too many cars. So these expressions are almost the same. So if I say there are too many cars, it means there should be fewer cars. Okay, there are too many means that the reality is not good. There are too many of something, in this case cars. So I think a projection for the future, an opinion on how things could improve is that we have fewer of something, we have too many. Okay, in this case here we are talking about cars. So if there are too many cars in a city, there should be fewer. Okay, so with fewer cars, the traffic would be better, the pollution would be better. Okay, so conditions would improve. Improve is the same as get better. Okay, so there should be fewer cars, but there aren't enough buses. Okay, so how are people not going to have a car if there aren't enough buses? Okay, so he adds, there is too little public transportation. There is too little public transportation. So it is difficult for people not to have cars, okay, because the public transportation is not enough, okay, is faulty. Now, let us see if we comprehend the text. How many people live in Moscow? Do you guys remember? Over 16 million people live in Moscow, okay, because Moscow has over 16 million inhabitants. How could transportation improve there in Moscow? Okay, so again, the word improve means to get better. So how could transportation improve in Moscow? So there should be fewer cars and more buses. Okay, look here what the author says here. He says, there should be fewer cars. Okay, so this is a projection for the future, something that could add the transportation in Moscow, okay? So, but there aren't enough buses, okay? So also there should be more buses, okay? So you see that we have always two manners, two ways of saying the same sentence, okay? We are going to see this in this class yet, okay? So there should be fewer cars and more buses, okay? Means another way of saying this sentence: there are too many cars and not enough buses, and there aren't enough buses, okay? Now, what other problems are there in Moscow? What other problems are there in Moscow? Do you remember? He says, there is too much pollution. There is too much pollution, and there isn't enough parking. And there isn't enough parking, okay? So these were two other examples of problems that Moscow faces, okay? Okay, but what I really want to study with you today is the difference between count and non-count nouns and the adverbs of quantity, okay? So look here in the sentences, some examples. Look, cars, for example, is a count noun. I can count 1 car, 2 cars, 3 cars, okay? So I'm going, for example, to use the adverb fewer, fewer cars, because it's countable. I can count. Okay? But look here, pollution. Pollution is not count. Okay? It's not countable. I cannot say 1 pollution, 2 pollution. Okay? So it's a non-count noun. Okay? That's exactly what we are going to see right now. Okay? So let's begin with the adverbs of quantity for count nouns. Okay? Nouns we can count. 1, 2, 3. For example, there are too many cars. Okay? So many I use with countable nouns, count nouns. There should be fewer cars, okay? There should be fewer cars, and there are too many cars are synonyms, okay? Are synonyms. If I say there are too many, means there should be fewer, okay? There are too many, there should be fewer. The same. Okay, now, there are too few buses. There are too few buses. So the opposite of many is few, okay? There are too many, there are too few. So we need more buses. There are too few buses. There aren't enough buses. Okay, as I brought here, there aren't enough subway lines. There aren't enough subway lines. And it's important to see that enough is an adverb of quantity. We can use both with count and non-count nouns, okay? We can use enough with both. We are going to see this. And finally, we need more police officers. We need more police officers, okay? More is also an adverb we can use with both count and non-count nouns, okay? Now let us see the non-count nouns here. So the first, there is too much traffic. So look, traffic I cannot count, is non-count. So much, I never use many traffic. No, it's not possible, okay? Many I use with nouns I can count, 1, 2, 3. And much with nouns I cannot count, okay? Like traffic, pollution, noise, okay? What else? There should be less pollution. Remember this? I say fewer. There should be fewer cars, okay? Fewer cars. But, because cars is countable. But there should be less pollution, because pollution is non-count, non-countable, okay? Now, there is too little parking. The same, parking is not countable. I can count parking spaces, okay? For example, in the mall, or at the mall, there are 1,000 parking spaces, okay? But parking is not countable, okay? It's non-countable. So I say there is too little, okay? When I have countable nouns, I say too few. Remember, there are too few buses. There are too few buses, but there is too little parking. Also, pay attention that the verb goes to the singular, okay? There is too much, there is too little, and when I have countable, I use the verbs in the plural, right? There are too many, there are too few, right? Now, there isn't enough public transportation. So there isn't enough, the same as when we have countable and non-countable nouns, okay? I can always use enough. The difference will be the verb, okay? When it's countable, there aren't enough. For example, there aren't enough buses. But when it's non-countable, I say there isn't enough public transportation. There isn't enough public transportation. And finally, we need more security. I cannot count security, but I can use more, just like we used with count nouns, okay? I can use enough and more with both count and non-count nouns. Okay, so here we have a list just to compare, right? So count, we use many. Non-count, we use much. Count, we use few. Non-count, we use little. Count, we use fewer. Non-count, we use less. Count, we use enough. And non-count, enough, the same as more. I can also use more for both count and non-count nouns, okay? Let's practice a little. Now, I want to talk about noise. So there is too much or too many noise? Too many, not possible, right? Can I count noise? One noise, two noise? No. Okay, another way to see this is looking at the verb. Look here, the verb to be is. Is singular, right? So means noise is non-countable, is not countable. So there is too much noise. There is too much noise here. Okay? So what is a synonym for there is too much noise here? Means there should be less or fewer. Less or fewer. We use less when we have non-count noun, right? Now, here we have people. People is countable, right? I can count people. So, there are too many people in London. There are too many people in London. People is a count noun, okay? So, if there are too many people in London, there should be fewer people in London. There should be fewer. There are too many, there should be fewer, okay? Now, here, subway lines. There aren't enough subway lines. There aren't enough subway lines. So means we need more. So there are too, how to say that? So subway lines is countable, right? I can count. So there are too few subway lines. There are too few subway lines. Not enough, okay? So see, these sentences are synonyms. There aren't enough subway lines. There are too few subway lines. Okay, so we need more subway lines. Okay, all these expressions and sentences are used to say the same thing. Okay, now here, public transportation, non-count, right? I cannot count one public transportation, two public transportation, no. Okay, so it's non-count. Look here, the verb is, right, in the singular. So there isn't enough, because I can use enough with both, remember? Count and non-count nouns. Okay, so there isn't enough public transportation. What is a synonym for this? There is too little public transportation. There is too little public transportation. Okay, so when it's count, I use there aren't enough, there are too few. Okay, when it's non-countable, I say there isn't enough, there is too little. There is too little public transportation. Okay, so that's it for today. This was a very important class, okay? Many people make mistakes when we use adverbs of quantity. So it's important to know that some nouns are countable, some nouns are not countable. And we have to see the difference in the adverbs we're going to use, okay? So very soon I'm going to produce a list of exercises to practice this. But before next class, we're going to study indirect questions, okay? How to make an indirect question from a WH question, okay? For example, what's your name? Where do you live? we are going to take these questions, which are in the direct form, and we are going to turn them into indirect questions, okay? Very important class too. Hope you guys don't miss it. Okay, thank you very much for watching. See you next class.